The night was thick with silence, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock on my nightstand. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, cool against my bare skin. Lying in bed, I had long surrendered to sleep, the weight of the day dissolving into the quiet hum of midnight. Then came the creak. Faint, almost imperceptible, yet enough to pull me from the depths of sleep. My eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the darkness. The door was ajar, a sliver of hallway light slicing into the room. Someone was there. A shadow hesitated at the threshold. Then, a whisper, low, uncertain. Elliot. The voice was familiar, yet in the quiet of the night, it carried a different weight. I shifted, pushing up onto one elbow. Isla? My voice was hoarse with sleep. She stepped inside, hesitating just past the doorway. In the dim light, I could see her face, pale, drawn, eyes dark with something unspoken. She wore an oversized sweater that fell past her hips, sleeves pulled over her hands, her posture tense, as though bracing for something. I frowned. What's wrong? She exhaled, a slow, measured breath. I couldn't sleep. A strange answer. She had her own room, a few doors down. Yet here she was, standing in mine at this ungodly hour, eyes shifting like she was trying to find the right words. I sat up fully, running a hand through my hair. Did something happen? She took a tentative step closer, then another. My pulse quickened, though I couldn't explain why. Isla and I had always been close, but something about this moment felt different, charged in a way I didn't quite understand. She hesitated at the edge of my bed. James and I had a fight.
James.
Her fiancé. The name alone sent a flicker of something sharp through my chest. I never liked him. Too polished, too controlled, the kind of man who measured his words like they were currency. But Isla loved him. Or at least she said she did. I exhaled. Again? She let out a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, again. She shifted, glancing at the floor before slowly lowering herself onto the bed beside me. My skin prickled at the nearness. The mattress dipped under her weight, pulling me toward her ever so slightly. I swallowed. You never come to me about him. She turned her head, eyes meeting mine in the low light. There was something raw in them, something vulnerable. I didn't know where else to go. Silence stretched between us. I could hear the faint rustle of the trees outside, the distant hum of a car passing down the street. Yet all I could focus on was her. The way her fingers curled into the fabric of her sweater, the way her lower lip trembled just slightly before she bit it back into stillness. You're shaking, I murmured before I could stop myself. She exhaled sharply, almost like a laugh. I guess I am. Without thinking, I reached out, my fingers barely brushing against hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she shifted, her hand turning so that our palms met. Warm skin against warm skin. A strange sensation tightened in my chest. I had held Isla's hand 1,000 times before. As kids, when she was scared of the dark. As teenagers, when she cried over breakups. But this was different. This was something else. Her fingers tightened around mine. I swallowed, pulse hammering in my ears. Isla. She didn't speak, didn't move, only held my gaze, the air between us thick with something unspoken. Then, slowly, she reached out with her free hand, her fingers brushing my bare shoulder. A touch so light it could have been a ghost of a movement, yet it sent a shiver through me. I don't want to be alone tonight, she whispered. The words hung there, heavy, weighted with meaning I wasn't sure I wanted to understand. My breath hitched. Outside, the wind shifted, rustling the curtains. But inside this room, in this moment, time felt like it had stopped. I should have said something. Should have pulled away, created space, set a boundary. But I didn't. I just sat there, heart pounding, as she slowly traced a line down my arm, her fingers lingering at my wrist. And then, barely above a whisper, "Can I stay?" The air between us was electric. And I didn't know how to say no. The room felt smaller now. Or maybe it was just the way Isla lingered, close enough that I could feel her warmth, see the slight tremble in her hands as they rested on the sheets between us. She had asked if she could stay, but her presence already filled the space, altering something fundamental between us. I should have said no. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and shifted slightly, making room for her. She took it as an invitation, pulling her legs up onto the mattress, folding them beneath her. The air between us crackled with something neither of us acknowledged, but both of us felt. Her eyes flicked to mine. "Do you think I'm making a mistake?" The question felt loaded, carrying more weight than just James and their unraveling engagement. I exhaled slowly. "Do you?" She let out a short, humorless laugh, looking down at her hands. "I don't know anymore." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, thick with memories, unspoken words, things that should never be considered, let alone spoken aloud. Then she reached out. Her fingers, light as a whisper, traced the inside of my wrist, the touch so feather-soft I wasn't sure if she was even aware she was doing it. My pulse betrayed me, quickening beneath her fingertips. "I hate how he makes me feel," she murmured. "Like I have to fit into something I don't belong to. Like I have to be someone I'm not." I had no words. My mind was a storm, a mix of warning bells and quiet, undeniable longing. "Isla," my voice was barely above a whisper. She looked up then, eyes shining with something fragile, something uncertain yet desperate. "But with you," she trailed off, shaking her head, as if afraid to finish the thought. I couldn't breathe. Her fingers tightened around my wrist, grounding herself, or maybe tethering me to her. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I just know that I don't want to leave this room. Not yet." Her hand moved then, palm sliding up my arm, leaving a trail of warmth in its wake. My skin burned beneath her touch, every nerve ending hyper-aware of how close she was, of how she was looking at me, like I was something forbidden, something she shouldn't want but couldn't turn away from. This wasn't right. I knew that. But the way she was leaning in, slow, hesitant, giving me every chance to stop her, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Her breath was warm against my lips, her eyes searching mine, waiting for resistance that never came. Then, a sound. A soft creak from the hallway. We both froze, our bodies tensed, the moment shattering like glass. Isla pulled back sharply, sucking in a breath, her wide eyes darting toward the door. Footsteps. Faint, retreating. Someone had been there. My stomach dropped. Isla pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes flicking back to mine, panic creeping into her expression. "We shouldn't be doing this," she whispered. But the way she looked at me said something else entirely. Something unfinished. Something inevitable. The silence between us felt heavier than it had before. Not the charged kind that had lingered moments ago, thick with something unspoken, but a different kind, one laced with fear, with the weight of what had almost happened and the realization that someone might have seen. Isla exhaled sharply, pulling her hands into the sleeves of her sweater, as if retreating into herself. "Elliot," her voice was barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. "We don't know if they heard us?" Her laugh was hollow, edged with something close to hysteria. "Or if they saw us?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The answer sat between us unspoken. It didn't matter if someone had seen the moment before we pulled away or if they had only heard the breathless quiet of something that should never have been happening. The damage was the same. She pushed herself off the bed abruptly, pacing toward the window. The moonlight cast long shadows across the floor, catching the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched as she ran them through her hair. "I need to go." Her voice was steadier now, but there was something in it, something that sounded like regret. I stood too quickly. "Isla, wait." She turned, her eyes flashing with something raw. "No, Elliot. This shouldn't have happened." The words sliced through me, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I took a step closer. "Then why did it?" She sucked in a sharp breath, shaking her head as if she could erase the past hour by sheer force of will. "I don't know." Her voice wavered. "I don't know." A beat of silence passed before she whispered, "I wanted it to." The confession unraveled something inside me. But just as quickly as she had said it, she straightened, as if physically forcing herself to retreat. But it doesn't matter, does it? She let out a bitter laugh. I'm engaged. And you're. She didn't finish the sentence. Maybe because there was no right way to. I clenched my jaw. I don't want to be just your escape. Her expression softened for the briefest moment before she looked away. You're not. She moved toward the door, fingers gripping the handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. I have to fix this. I knew she meant James. Her life. The version of herself she was supposed to be. But I also knew something else. She wasn't sure she wanted to. She hesitated for a second longer, her breath uneven, like she wanted to say more but couldn't bring herself to. Then, without another word, she slipped out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind her. And just like that, she was gone. I sank onto the bed, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. A message. From her. I can't stop thinking about you. My chest tightened. I stared at the words, knowing they would change everything. And knowing I'd never be able to ignore them.